So, tell me first your name and your age and something about your background.
My name is Zsofia Komaromy. I'm 20 years old. I'm from Hungary. I live in the capital, in Budapest. I spent recently 2 years in England studying for A-levels. My father is a translator, and in my whole family there was always a strong appreciation of foreign languages and foreign cultures and history. So I think it's a shared interest, but it's nothing that I would say I don't imagine myself as becoming a historian or anthropologist and I don't think I would have any sort of exceptional knowledge in these fields. I'm just really interested in them, and like with reading, I've always been a very keen reader. It's definitely my favorite hobby to read, and I read anything I can get my hands on, and I find it's really important. It gives me the feeling that I learn about the world, that I try to think outside my own boundaries, because the more I see, the more I realize how little I know, and how I have no idea what's going on in the world, because there are so many things, so many different cultures. So I think for me it was very defining to go abroad, see other things, and that's why I'd like to carry on somewhere in the area of languages, just because I feel like it opens up possibilities to learn.
Mm-hmm. Tell me how you came across Letters to Lily.
I was very fortunate, I think, to hear about it quite early, about its publication in Hungary, because my father, Zsofia Komaromy, is the translator who was asked to translate it to Hungarian. From the start, when he started to translate it, he said straight away that he's sure it's something that would interest me, because it was written to a girl, and the way she was imagined in the book is about my age, and since he knew that I'm interested in other cultures, and definitely in language, and just in general in the world, he said that this book is very interesting in that it gives so much information, but still reads like a book. It's not like it's a textbook. He even during translation, for example, he said how good it was for him to sometimes go away for a while and deal with different things, and then come back to the novel and carry on with translation, which I guess is a very different approach than, for example, translating non-fiction or some book about a certain historical event. So I was very interested in reading it, and read bits and pieces while he went along, and we talked a lot about it as it developed, as he went along in translation. And then when it was published, I read it straight away, and I just I guess I felt that connection straight away. I mean, right from the introduction, it just hit a note that for me has just always been, as far as I can remember, very interesting. This idea of how great a variety there is in the world in general. I mean, that's the subtitle in itself, how the world works. I found so ambitious, and it straight away, I guess, it catches attention. You want to know what's in a book that starts like that. So I guess it was a mixture of curiosity and just the feeling that this is something that fits into my interests.
Was there any particular letter, because there are letters to Lily, about any particular subject which you particularly enjoyed?
What I found, less in terms of a certain letter, but the recurring ideas in the book. For example, your mentioning of the importance of imagination, or literature, certain pieces of literature like Tolkien or even Harry Potter, I remember in one letter. And I just thought how fascinating it is to read in a book that's from someone who's an expert in anthropology and history, to read about literature that we associate with childhood and imagination. And it's something that I find very important, and one of my favorite genres in literature is fantasy, because of the vast possibilities in that genre, because it's all about imagination, as most fiction is. And you know, when I read a letter that was, I think it was on education, and how it actually contrasted this idea of imagination and thinking and being individuals to what actually happens in schools, that is the complete opposite of that tries to fit children into slots and make it more controllable to educate. And I just found it such an interesting connection to make, to connect anthropology to imagination, and that was one of the things that really grabbed me. And then the other piece that I found really meaningful to me personally was the letter or the chapter on democracy, how it works, whether it's the best solution, which are the alternatives, and how it works for countries where there are alternative political systems. And I guess for me it carries an interest, because I in my country I'm as old as the democracy in that country. And I see day to day how we try to make it work, and find out how we can play a part. Young people try to understand how can they actually be a part of decision making. And the older generation tries to work their experience from the older system to the democratic way of life, while in general really we are the same country, people are the same people. So what I found fascinating in that letter is that I read exactly what I was starting to understand, that democracy is not the answer to everything. It's not that you can only have, for example, economic success with democracy. I found that really fascinating, put down in the book, and in a really understandable way, that there are alternatives, and we have to understand them. And it might not mean that they are better, it might not mean that we should follow another route, but we definitely should understand others better. And then that brings back to us to really funnily of the introduction, which I still find for some reason really maybe a part that just jumped out at me, saying that we have to realize how little we represent from the world. And I just realized that I might know my environment, but that doesn't even mean that I know how, for example, my neighbors live, because every single family is so different. And then not to mention different countries, different cultures. So that recurring theme I found so important and so great to see, written down in that way, which was it seemed so clear. It felt as if it was really said to me personally, rather than reading it in a textbook or a history book, because it said things in a very matter-of-fact way, while still being able to contrast, for example, completely different ideas, and I just found it very very realistic, very believable, rather than constantly thinking, well, how can I apply this to everyday life? It is everyday life, so I think it would be really hard for me to pinpoint, say letter 25 was special or letter 15 was special. I think it's more like the themes that stuck with me. But then again, I'm generally like that. It's for example, I find it really hard to talk about a favorite novel or a favorite character in a novel. I think with me it's more like the way the thoughts it makes me think that matter, and which parts really made me challenge my own view and my own thinking, and I guess when a book achieves that, I just realized that it must be a great part in the book, and that's what I remember, not the page number or the chapter.
Were there any subjects which you wished I'd written either a section or a letter about? Did I miss some important things out, or did you feel it gave a rounded?
I think there were subjects where I thought it would be so great to see maybe a more developed example. For example, about democracy and alternatives. I think I could have read a whole book just on that topic alone, and have European countries in there and Asian cultures in there, and just to see all those ideas developed into something greater, or the last theme. The self and body and self and things like taste and vision, and how we actually get into contact with the world around us. What do we experience physically? I thought that was another theme I could have read a whole book on, from music to tea, to how we actually experience these things, and how we turn these into feelings and memories, and how we associate them with completely different ideas. But then again, I guess that's the beauty of the book, because if you got stuck with one of those themes, then all the rest couldn't have been in there. And I suppose it really caught me in the beginning, that sentence, that some of these letters might seem simple, but there's a very sophisticated background and school of thought behind them. And I'm sure that in many cases I haven't even noticed, and there's a whole theory there, and which has been developed and talked about and contrasted and challenged. So I guess it's actually better that the book goes for variety, rather than going into a very scholar writing, because then I guess I wouldn't be able to understand that much, because as I said, I'm no expert on any of the topics, and on a very personal interest side, I guess language for me is very interesting. So I could have read maybe a whole letter, a whole section on language alone, either just about language and thought, or because there was a bit about language and culture, which again I found so fascinating, this idea of which one comes first, and can we have culture without language, can we have language without culture? So then again, that was something I could have read so much more on. But I have the feeling that maybe the book itself will make people think, and more topics will arise from these discussions, or simply from reading the book. And I mean, I'm sure there are so many topics. As I said before, I can't even imagine how you actually managed to choose, because I think I think when I read just the contents, first I thought how I would sit down to a title that says how the word works. How would I choose what to write about? But then I thought there's actually so much in the world. There are so many topics. How do you actually narrow it down? So I guess I'm glad that all those topics are in there, and those gave me enough to think for a long while. So I'm sure it's a book you have to go back to. You reread it, and I mean, to start off with, I read it from cover to cover. Because that's, it was interesting, and I couldn't stop, so I went through. But I think you have to go back to it and read individual letters, just one at a time, not in order, maybe just pick one that's on the day just came up in a discussion, or pick another that you saw a movie about or something. So I think it's enough for a while to give you plenty of thought, and then your own experiences come into it. So I think there's plenty in there, and I'm sure there's so much else you could talk about. So I guess it would be easier to say what you shouldn't talk about, which is nothing.
What about were there things that you felt, this is very English and I'm Hungarian and it's very different here? Were there things that slightly shocked you?
Definitely. I think things like Law and Order, or definitely the parts about how being an island caused a very different idea of individuality to develop in England. Or just the simple things like tea drinking, and I found it fascinating how you linked the tea to Industrial Revolution, to stopping the spreading of disease. It's fascinating to make these connections, which I as a Hungarian could have never made, because it doesn't occur to me. But I think I am very lucky, because I think I could understand enough, both from experience and both from learning, to know, to see where you were coming from. But I'm sure that as a Hungarian, it didn't, in a way it meant, of course, much less to me, because I couldn't look at it from a personal experience perspective. But then again, it meant something completely different, because I looked at it as an outsider, as a Hungarian, and as the whole book is about the fact that it's not a shame. If you shouldn't feel ashamed if you don't know anything about another culture, but go and educate yourself, find out more, because you have to realize how different we are. So those were parts where I thought, for example, obviously our law and our judicial system developed from other roots, in a completely different way. But then again, of course, you talk about the influences the English law had in Europe, and of course that affects me. Or how you say that being an island affected England, that I can't relate to, because my country isn't. But I can relate to the fact how we're not an island, and how it affected us being in Central Europe, but still being completely isolated culturally, because our language is completely different. We have been conquered many times. We have lost huge territories. but also be assimilated. So many different parts of other cultures. So I could look at those bits, I suppose, from a point of view of, well, this is different, but it's interesting how different it is. So I hope I understood it, I'm sure, in a different way than you wrote it, and you meant, for example, for Lily to understand it. But it was fascinating for me to see, because it was someone else's point of view, someone else's experience. But I think those are points where most Hungarians would definitely have a very different perspective than anyone from England. But I suppose if I hadn't known before, the book definitely taught me that I can talk only about myself. Yes, I represent my family and even my country in a way, but possibly you could give this book to someone I went to school with, and they would have a completely different point of view. They would have a completely different opinion. So I all I know is that I think those things basically historically, because of the differences, affect us in a different way than it would affect an English person who reads it.